In 1946, France saw riots, not because of politics, but because bread prices increased. Bread is a symbol of peace, yet it has often become the trigger of economic conflicts. Every price increase in a bakery reflects a global struggle for resources and labor. Historical records show that the first protests over grain prices began as early as the 18th century. Archives reveal that the price of bread has always been an indicator of social inequality. Today we still stand in front of bakery windows asking the same question: why is good bread expensive? This is not just a story about flour and yeast, it is the real code of economics. Hidden inside are the formulas of cost, labor, and losses that shape entire industries. Bakers of the past understood that perfect bread requires time, skill, and market stability. Modern business often sacrifices these three things for lower prices. As a result, cheap bread is not a victory for consumers. It is a compromise across the entire production chain. According to some researchers, these compromises caused artisan baking traditions to disappear in parts of Europe. But why does this cycle repeat century after century? It seems we live in an era where bread once again reflects the economic reality of every city. According to World Bank data, bread remains among the top products most sensitive to inflation. In the 19th century, this caused hunger. Today it causes small bakeries to close. Every loaf represents hundreds of small decisions in logistics, taxation, and human labor. When prices rise by themselves, it usually means something much bigger has changed. It involves not only flour and energy, but also financial competition strategies. Even a small bakery operates economically like a national corporation. Parisian bakery archives show losses were often built directly into supply systems. Meanwhile, large players survived by manipulating grain pricing structures. Today, the situation is repeating itself almost exactly, only the numbers are bigger and the stakes are higher. Why does such a simple product hide such a complex profit and loss mechanism? That is the central question of this investigation. Because bread is not just food. It is an economic X-ray of society. And in the next few minutes we will explore where craftsmanship ends and survival economics begins. The main question remains: who really decides the price of good bread? The market or people? After World War II, thousands of bakeries closed. Their place was taken by bread factories. This was not just technological progress, but the beginning of a competitive war for consumer trust. Archival documents show that in the 1950s advertising first called bread an industrial miracle. According to one theory, this was the moment when the word craft began to disappear, replaced by the word convenience. Large producers used marketing as a weapon. More volume, less truth. Packages claimed traditional taste, even though the dough was made in 45 minutes. Thus began the era of imitation quality, where the label mattered more than the taste. In response, small bakeries tried to survive through reputation and manual craftsmanship. But the market had already become accustomed to the idea that bread should cost almost nothing. The economics of craftsmanship could not compete with mass market production. While factories reduced production costs, artisan bakers lost customers. Quality became a luxury, and cheap bread became the new normal. Business historians call this the trust and packaging effect. When branding replaces value and slogans become tools of manipulation. Large chains invested not in taste, but in perception psychology. Slogans, smells, and storefront color. Everything calculated to create instant trust. According to late 20th century marketing studies, bread brands were recognized more often than the names of local bakeries. This meant that a craftsman's name was losing power against advertising budgets. At the same time, dependence on suppliers increased. Flour, energy, and logistics became more expensive. In this chain, small bakeries became outsiders in a system selling tradition without substance. Yet the paradox is that these same bakeries preserved authentic taste and traditional recipes. Every morning, a craftsman competed not only with price, but with illusion. According to some reports, large brands even funded research into the optimal smell of bread, so that a factory aroma would be associated with comfort, not cheap mass production. This is how bread became a product of emotion rather than craftsmanship. But this story has a reverse wave. Since the 2010s, an artisan renaissance has begun. People grew tired of imitations and started looking for taste instead of advertising. However, the old laws of the market remain strong: marketing versus manual craft. And today the question sounds even sharper: who wins, the one who bakes or the one who convinces? This conflict has become not just an economic phenomenon, but a mirror of modern society's values. And the battle for real bread is still ongoing, now in the minds of customers. When it seems that the market has been completely taken over by giants, the craftsman still has a chance. Historical examples show that local bakeries survived not through price, but through meaning. Parisian archives from the 19th century record that the best bread was sold near markets of communication and culture. Today this formula works again, only with different tools, media and storytelling. A modern bakery is no longer just a place of sales, but a micro-center of trust. It survives if it knows how to tell its story, who they are, why their bread is honest, and what makes it different. According to data from the 2020s, small business marketing has shifted from discounts to narrative. People want to know the origin of the flour, the type of sourdough, and the face of the baker. This has become a new currency of trust, equal to taste itself. A craftsman no longer competes on price, but on perceived value. Successful bakeries implement flexible strategies: short menus, seasonal products, transparent processes. For example, in Germany the number of open bakery concepts is growing, where visitors can see the entire process. This is not just a show, but proof of honesty toward the customer. From this comes a new business model: craftsmanship through transparency. Every kilogram of flour and every minute of labor becomes content and trust. Bakers have begun using social media as a showcase of their craft. Not advertising, documentation. Not artificial photos, real flour dust. These visual stories do not sell bread, they sell an attitude toward quality. According to one theory, the growth of artisan brands is directly connected to the effect of honest routine. Small bakeries are bringing back the idea that manual work is a value, not a weakness. Competition is shifting from price to identity, from mass production to authenticity. And the winner is the one who turns the process into a dialogue rather than a secret. Historians note that the most resilient bakeries were always open to the world, to people and to change. Today this appears in new formats: collaborative baking, education, and local grain sourcing. In Switzerland, France, and Italy, a movement called Bread from Our Land is emerging, bread made only from local raw materials. This is a strategy not against the market, but for sustainability. Every loaf becomes a marker of independence, both economic and cultural. And the more bakeries choose transparency instead of price dumping, the higher their survival chances. Thus, bread returns to its original purpose: to unite rather than compete. The main principle of this strategy is simple: be part of people's lives, not just part of the market. And perhaps this is exactly where the future of artisan bread lies. Bread has always been more than a product. It is a sign of human presence. Cultural historians call it the silent language of civilization. Every era has rewritten this language according to its own values. When bread became cheaper, people began to lose their sense of community. When it became more expensive, society remembered solidarity. In the Middle Ages, bread united townspeople during festivals and helped them survive poor harvests. It was part of a social contract, a symbol of sharing rather than competing. Over time, This meaning was replaced by quantity and production speed. Factory bread became a mirror of the industrial age, uniform, mass-produced, standardized. But in the 21st century, a reverse movement began. The search for uniqueness and a return to origins. People began baking at home, sharing sourdough starters, and creating digital baker communities. And suddenly artisan bread stopped being just food. It became a form of resistance. Resistance against impersonality, against haste, against the loss of the human touch. According to one theory, the rise of home bakeries during the pandemic became a cultural phenomenon. It turned out to contain more humanity than any marketing algorithm. According to ethnographic studies, the tradition of baking together restores a sense of stability. Watching dough ferment allows people to feel time, real, alive, and growing. And this transforms the craft from just a business into a ritual of trust. In every culture, from Ukrainian ceremonial bread to Swiss grain loaves, bread speaks about community. It tells who we are and how we preserve warmth for one another. When we buy real bread, we are not voting for taste. We are voting for the idea of human presence in the process. According to one view, these markers of community are what prevent small societies from disappearing. That is why a bakery becomes not just a point of sale, but a place of memory. Here a new type of economy is born, the economy of participation, where value is measured not by profit, but by the threads of trust that connect people. The history of bread shows that societies begin to fall apart when they stop sharing sourdough. And they are reborn when they start baking together again. We are returning to an ancient meaning. Bread baked with others becomes stronger. And perhaps this is where the idea of the future is born, through flour, labor, and the simple presence of a human being. Today, good bread is increasingly becoming not a basic product, but a conscious purchase. And this is no longer just emotion, but a market shift visible in artisan bread sales. In 2026, artisan products grew faster than regular bread in central retail shelves. This means that a segment of customers is willing to pay more for quality and product story. But cheap bread will not disappear. It will simply remain the compromise of the mass market. This is exactly where the main strategic crossroads for a bakery begins. Volume or value. If a bakery tries to be the cheapest, it almost always loses margin and strategic flexibility. If it builds its brand around trust, origin, and craftsmanship, it gains a chance for sustainability. From a business perspective, an artisan bakery is strongest where there are local suppliers and a clear product story. This increases the customer's willingness to pay a premium for bread that looks and feels authentic. But there is an important risk here. Marketing without substance quickly turns into empty packaging. Today's customer is more informed than 10 years ago. More often, they look not for slogans, but for proof. Ingredients, sourdough, fermentation time, the face of the baker. Therefore, the future of bread is not only taste, but transparency. If a person understands what they are paying for, the price feels fair. If they do not, even expensive bread feels like deception. For the average customer, the practical takeaway is simple. Do not look only at the price per loaf. Look at ingredients, freshness, fermentation method, and who stands behind the product. For a bakery owner, the conclusion is different. Do not try to compete with everyone. Choose your niche. Daily bread, local sourdough, seasonal recipes, or open production. This is what makes a business not just profitable, but memorable. The forecast for the coming years is simple. Quality bread will become more expensive, while mass bread will remain under cost pressure. Rising costs of raw materials, energy, and labor will continue pushing prices upward. At the same time, the artisan market will grow where trust and brand story exist. This does not mean a good bakery must be expensive for everyone. It means it must be honest in its model. How much labor costs, how much ingredients cost, and where value is created. This is exactly how strong artisan brands survive. Not through the illusion of low prices, but through a clear logic of quality. So the answer to the main question becomes clear. Good bread is expensive not because someone wants to earn more from it. It is expensive because time, labor, losses, and trust are honestly paid for within it. And in this sense, bread is a small model of the entire economy of the future.